Hello and welcome to another episode of the Southbound Sports Podcast. I am your host, Richie Leahy. Well, baseball season has started officially a few weeks ago after the World Baseball Classic. I had a couple other topics to talk about, and I'm going to dive back into baseball. We have been going to spring football games, so if you look me up, Richie Leahy on Twitter, I have a Flickr album set up. I attended the NC State spring football game. Jeff Meyer, one of our other editors here, he went to the West Virginia spring football game, and we've been watching film on a couple other spring football games, and I wasn't able to get Jeff on the podcast this week, but I'm hoping to be able to get him on in the next coming weeks to talk a little bit about spring football. And even if I can't get him on next week, I'll probably start talking at least on the games that I went to. But if you want to check those out, I put together a series on Medium. It was our first look into that format, which is basically a blog post of live photos that you took somewhere that you just picked on a category and just went through. I can add some text. I did it while I was there. Kind of ran out of batteries. I focused on taking more photos on my camera, so I need to visit that, and I'm going to add a little bit more of the photos from my good camera. But those right now are all on Flickr, so make sure you check those out. It's pretty cool. If you're not following me on there, follow me on Medium. And make sure you follow Southbound Sports. We've been getting pretty good reviews and pretty good views. All right, for now, going back to baseball. Major League Baseball. I have been doing a bit of research on it. Today is going to be the first foray into that. I've been looking at the structure and the season in Major League Baseball. And Jeff has his own opinions on this, so we'll be going back and forth a little bit. But if you look at baseball, it's turned into a regional sport. Right now, there are little pods of fans for each major market. Now, when I grew up, I might have mentioned this before on the podcast, the Atlanta Braves were all over television. So were the Chicago Cubs and the Yankees and a few other teams. But more so, at least where I lived in Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, you had a better chance of watching a Braves game or a Cubs game than you did a Pittsburgh Pirates game. Pittsburgh Pirates, they kind of went through a little bit of a transition with their regional coverage, getting bought by Fox Sports Pittsburgh, which then morphed into Root Sports, which is currently the network there. Atlanta Braves used to be on Turner Broadcasting, which turned into TBS in the 90s. I'm not sure when that came around. But the Atlanta Braves were on basically every day that I could remember. I think they had most, if not all of their games broadcast, especially the home games, on network cable. And so we had cable television. We didn't have that many channels at that time. So here you go. You're going to watch sports. You can see the Braves play every day on a lower channel. It wasn't a niche channel like Root Sports that you had to pay for the sports network to get. So here you go, you can watch the Braves every day. The other opposite of that was the Chicago Cubs. They had their WGN Chicago, which was an affiliate. We also got national radio out of there and some other things. But that was another one of like the Midwest spot coverage. People consider Pennsylvania parts of Pennsylvania, the Pittsburgh market, part of the Midwest of the United States due to its proximity to like Ohio and everything. If you think the Big Ten Conference in football, they let Penn State in the early 90s. Around the same time, they were getting that Midwestern trend. So in the Pittsburgh market, that's what we had. So even though the Pittsburgh market had a lot of the local teams, you had a better chance of catching a Cubs game or a Braves game on television. I naturally gravitated towards the Atlanta Braves, was a big fan of them growing up because you could watch the game. And then as you get a little bit older, experience a few more things, You get to see some other teams, and as a young kid, you have that impression that, hey, yeah, this used to be a team that was on every day, but then they start going away. You don't watch them as much, and then you kind of drift as a fan. And I wonder how many other teams had that same feeling. And I have to think that plays a major part in the Atlanta Braves. So in our first series here on Major League Baseball payrolls, and we'll be kind of going through, a lot of these are better written down when compared to podcasting format because we're actually looking at data and figures. But I'm going to start with the Atlanta Braves here. Not going in any alphabetical order. I know they're not technically last in their division or bad. I just don't have, I could eliminate them right now from the World Series. They're not going to make it. They may hit a run and maybe make the World Series or the playoffs as a wild card, but they're not going to make it into the World Series, and I'll put that in writing. And the reason is their payroll doesn't stack up. So Major League Baseball, the reason that we're focusing on Major League Baseball first compared to the other sports is that they do not have a payroll or a salary cap for their payroll, So here you go, you have an open payroll. You can buy as many players as you want. You can go ahead and try to make your team a winner overnight. If you really wanted to as an owner, you could say, okay, I'm going to go in, pay for all free agents. I can go ahead and pay for players to stay. So yes, payroll has a big factor here in teams that can be successful and that are successful. The other hand is there is still a component here with development, player development, drafting, the minor league system, and everything, but you still have a way over top that you can still pay your way out of mistakes. More so than in other sports due to that payroll limitation, the salary cap. The other three leagues all have it in some form. They also have draft pick slots that the league agrees on. But baseball right now, they have the pure American capitalism. They have the open market. And now you're seeing teams, some of them, they might be in smaller markets. They can't compete. They might be able to get a run, but they can't compete overall. They might be, if you think of the Oakland Athletics, I think they might have been looking to move. All the teams in California are looking to move because they're not getting the support. They don't have fans coming to the games. They're not getting the network deals that they wanted. They're not getting people watching, which is why the Raiders can go ahead and move to Las Vegas. They might have more appeal there because it's a great touristy town where a lot of people from the East Coast go and watch. And I'm not saying that the East Coast has better fans. It's just a different concentration of people. And teams that have already started on the East Coast might have had fans for longer, and the teams on the West Coast in comparison are generally newer. So here you go, you have major sports teams. They can pretty much be in any market that they want. They can pay for players. And if you look at rosters, some teams just don't compete. So when I'm looking at my stats here, and I'm only focusing on the Atlanta Braves today for our podcast, the Atlanta Braves used to be in the top payroll. There's a few years here where they're number 3 in entire Major League Baseball. And what I'm looking at, and this is back in the early or the late 90s, because I only could find data from there. And I'll link to my data and everything on the site. But here you go. You have a team playing in Atlanta. Great television deal, which I assume is how they're paying for this money. Again, I was quite young during this era of Atlanta Braves baseball. But they used to be on. They were kind of on every year. So you wanted to pick a team that you wanted to watch. Where I grew up, that's where you would watch. If you wanted to go to a game, you would have to go to see the Pirates play. And I went to some great Pirates games. I saw Tony Gwynn. His last season, he hit a home run in Pittsburgh. We took a bus down. I remember that. Standing ovation. He came out, sat to the crowd. I don't think that was his last game played in Pittsburgh. I think he played another one after that. But it was pretty much his farewell tour. I got to see that. And baseball has that unique situation where you can experience things like that in any market because they have to fill their schedule with 162 games. And that's one of the reasons why I kind of don't mind the fact that they got rid of interleague play the way it used to be structured. Teams from any market should be able to play in any market at any time. And I know they have to have parity in the schedule and everything to make sure that it's a fair playoffs. And I like their structure now, even with the built-in wild card. But from this Wild West free agent market of Major League Baseball, here you have teams that they can relatively move up. So I think there are 30 teams. Looking at my data, I'm only looking at the Braves, so I don't have the full teams to look. But I think that the lowest ranking payroll would be 30th. The top team would then be number 1, and so on. And now this is not capped. There's no salary cap, so there's a wider range of actual team salaries. The team at the bottom might be quite a few payroll cycles away from competing compared to a team at the top that have filled in their roster, paid to keep great players, signed some free agents to bolster maybe their bullpen, and then they have a full team full of major league players that are productive and that can bring you deep into the playoffs. So looking at this for the Braves used to be in the top, more than the top half of the league. They were in the upper echelon. They were up competing with teams like the Yankees. And you can kind of see how other franchises have fallen off as well. One that strikes me is the Baltimore Orioles. They were up here in the top of the payroll, and then it just starts to dip over years. Maybe it's because they're not filling the stadium. Maybe the owner just realizes like they don't want to compete anymore. They don't want to try to grab these top guys and bring talent in. Maybe they think that they can make payroll by having less guys. So now you're seeing Major League Baseball. I'm actually recording this the day it's going to be released on the 19th of April, I think. Tigers are on right now, so I'm watching that game. They're playing at Tampa Bay. The stadium is basically empty. So you build these big monstrosities of stadiums, and yeah, it's great whenever you can fill them in, but a lot of markets, like Tampa Bay is a newer market. I can't remember when they came into the league, but I think it was like in the late 90s too. So I was already a fan of Major League Baseball. I played baseball Little League at the time. And here I go. I'm cheering for teams, players coming different through the cycles, different markets. And now you have teams that come into the league, and it's not, to me, it's not a destination team. I don't think I would drive to Tampa Bay just to see their stadium. Could I get great tickets? No doubt in my mind. I don't think that they sell a lot of tickets. And then the owners, they have a choice. They have to make a decision on what they want to do. Do they want to go ahead and pay for top players where they might not see a return on their investment? Maybe they do pay. I think Tampa Bay was in the World Series a few years ago, probably quite a few years ago, and now their stadium's pretty much empty. So they had a chance, they didn't capitalize for whatever reason, and now that they're going to be probably bottom in attendance, I could probably look that up too. But here you go, looking back to the Braves. Braves face a similar situation. They're in Atlanta. Not a lot of diehard fans in Atlanta. I don't want to say a transient population, but their population, they just don't seem to support these professional sports. Yeah, it's a great market. It's a big market. Teams watch. People watch. They get good ratings. But do they actually attend the games? Nah, not so much. And so Atlanta, their ownership, I want to say that they were sold too, and that's when you can really see a dip. Some owners just don't care. They own the teams because they want to say that they own a team. They might not care about winning. They might not be invested in winning. So as fans, we're supposed to go ahead and keep caring. Only chase championships. Fans aren't supposed to be bandwagon fans. They're not supposed to cheer for teams that are at the top. They're not supposed to like players that aren't loyal. Players that go ahead and try to move teams to win a championship. It's talked about all the time in sports radio. It's trained so that it leaves your consciousness like you're not supposed to cheer for teams and players like that. But here we have owners openly not competing. And so as I look at the Braves, they go from the top three in payroll in the entire Major League Baseball, they're dropping down into the 20s consistently. Now, a great And you can't compete every year. Any sports fan knows that. But you want a sense of hope each year. Either, okay, I'm going to watch players. I'm going to go ahead and watch young players, and then hopefully we sign these guys. And in a few years, we'll be good. Some teams, like the Pittsburgh Pirates, every time they're good, they have a good team, they sell their superstars. So they constantly stay at the bottom. And that's what the Braves have been trending to for a while. They have good players. They let them get away. Mark Teixeira, I think he left. And did he win a World Series with the Yankees? I know that he left and went around. This is a while ago. And they had some other ones. Justin Upton, they signed real big for like a one-year deal. And you can't sign big guys to one-year deals and expect them to keep competing and winning over the top. It's just not going to happen. And so there we go. You have teams, how it should be structured is that teams should ebb and flow in the Major League payroll in the grand scheme of things. There shouldn't be one team at the top. And I'm not talking about the extreme. Like, yeah, the Yankees have said that they're going to pay. They're known to pay. They're in a huge market. If they don't pay, people aren't going to show up. So they know that they have to pay to at least get the names to get people in the seats to go and see the Yankees. So yeah, I'm not saying that they have to be there, but teams should ebb and flow up into at least the top 10, at least hover around 10 and drop down. They shouldn't be in the low 20s for years at a time. That's not competing. That is not competing in the grand scheme of things. So that's what the research is looking at. And I know maybe baseball could be the one. We talked about relegation before and promotion. And I think baseball could be in a unique scenario where they really make it the best of sports and they could own the summer. And this is an idea I'm tossing around. I'm going to throw it out here on the podcast for the first time. And I'm sure I'll talk about it again because I think this is the best idea for baseball. They should open up their markets to any owners. So like get rid of the minor league system because here you have some contracts. That's where contracts go to die. So players are always living in the minor leagues. And you go ahead and you let teams be the pods. So maybe you have the teams that are already in Major League Baseball. They're set in stone. They are going to be or have home field advantage or whatever you want to go ahead and give them. But I think baseball, this opening day, the spring season, should be open to every team or every city or every owner that wants to own a team. And I know that there are not going to be as many markets and as many minor league teams as there are. It's not going to work. They're not all going to be into this. So there is still going to be a split for minor league baseball. So what you do is you go ahead and you open it up. You say maybe AA teams, AAA teams. You build like a regional pod. And think about it like college basketball. These are the teams that they're going to play each other. So you're going to have teams play in their region and maybe cross-regional. Do something where like one region plays another region every year and you rotate it. Like let's say there are 8 regions. So every 8 years, your region is going to play another region. So here in the Southeast, you have a region that includes teams like the Tampa Bay Rays. It also includes their minor league teams like right here in the Durham area, Durham Bulls. You also have maybe the Atlanta Braves. You have the Florida Marlins and their minor league teams, whichever ones they want to keep. I know some of the single A ones will probably go away. They're not in big enough markets to support this. But Durham's a pretty big city that has minor league baseball. Charlotte's a pretty big city that has minor league baseball and other professional teams. You have minor league baseball in a lot of big cities. I'm not sure what other ones in Florida have it. I'm assuming cities like Orlando would. You can go ahead and add other teams over, maybe like Birmingham. I'm sure that they have a minor league team. I think that might be where Michael Jordan played. And you go ahead and you have these teams battle it out. So for the first half of the year, they battle out for champions. And then if they really wanted to get into it, they could then have All-Star Weekend where All-Star Weekend turns into a single elimination tournament with the 8 teams. So the Southeast All-Stars versus the Northeast and vice versa, whatever. It just rotates. Or you have it like picked based off the entire winning percentage. Or actually, no, you have it start by who they play, and then it just cycles through the year. And then it's a single elimination tournament. Maybe it starts on, when's a normal All-Star game? Tuesday. So you'd have Saturday would be 8, Sunday would be 4, and then maybe Monday off, and then go Tuesday and have an All-Star game. And give it a little bit of break. You could still do 162 games. You get rid of spring training. You have like some type of mini spring training where you break it down, because now you don't have as big of a minor league system where you have to feed with all these games for spring training. You might have 2 weeks of spring training instead of months. So baseball would start in March or April. Probably keep it a little bit in April. Spread it out. Actually, like maybe the last 2 weeks of March, you go ahead and start it. And then you have these pods where those teams play. And then so they play series against each other where you will still get big matchups. You'll still have the Tampa Bay versus Florida. You'll still have the Atlanta Braves versus the Rays versus the Florida Marlins, whoever they're going to get. And then you have some minor league teams that would want to step up to form these pods. So basically you're taking 30 teams and now you're growing it into maybe 90 teams so that you have a good base of players, and it covers more of the country. As baseball becomes more regionalized, now you have more fans who are invested in a time of the year when other sports are kind of going through their champions. So if you want to draw eyeballs away from NHL and NBA playoffs, have every region have a team that's in it. Now, some of them are probably going to be garbage. They might not be able to invest owners, but maybe open it up, make it the first sport besides, I think the Packers have public ownership. Make it so they go ahead and they can pick up new public ownership. So now you have a base where people who donate, they can go ahead and vote. It's a digital age where a lot of people can vote right from their house. Just like some digital system. Major League Baseball can go ahead and invest in this because now you're having other markets. And hey, some of these smaller markets, maybe you sell them on your Major League Baseball television package. And instead of charging $100 a year or whatever it is, you just start having it on Netflix or charging your $10 a month or whatever it is. And so then here you can pick it up and you can watch any game. It's not limited to teams because now you have more inventory. And yeah, you're going to have teams that drop off or ratings that drop off as teams get eliminated. But you have the first elimination in June or July. No playoffs. You just take the top 2 or 3 teams from each region and then they continue to play. And then the rest of the minor league, they play maybe 2 more months so that you can still play. So like everyone, it kind of breaks into Division A and Division B or Division C, depending on how many teams are left. And you could do this on and off. So maybe like instead of maybe not 90, maybe you have 80 teams, which would be, I don't know, if there's 8 regions, that's what, 10 teams in a region? I'd have to figure out the math to get to 162 games. But these lower division teams, they're not going to end up playing 162 games. So you have just some payroll benefits, blah, blah, blah. If your team makes the playoffs, they get a bump in pay or whatever, and it can be set by team, which might incentivize some of the bigger markets to keep going. But then you have these younger markets, the smaller markets, the ones in America that are growing, some of the ones that just haven't had sports teams because they've turned into tech meccas. Like if you think of Silicon Valley, maybe the guys in Silicon Valley want to have a baseball team in Silicon Valley, called whatever they want. You can go ahead, have a public team, they put them in, and then they can go ahead and try to buy bigger players, bigger name contracts to bring into this region. Then the All-Star game kind of means something. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's just an overall who's having the best year for the first half. Have your All-Star game. That way the travel can be situated, the schedules can be made. Like I said, stretch it a few days, maybe do a tournament of 1 All-Stars from each region. Then each region's crowned. So maybe if I live here in the Southeast, I can go ahead and cheer for them. Friends I still have in Pittsburgh, they can go ahead and cheer for the Northeast region or whatever. And then you have teams that are going to go ahead and fit a more diverse audience. Because now kids who don't watch sports, and maybe you don't even have it on Netflix, maybe you throw it on YouTube, they just have their own television network, and you take a little bit of a cut right off the top for these lower tier games. So like you have YouTube, you say, hey, for the teams that don't make the Major League Baseball cut after the All-Star break, they're going to be playing in basically a minor league system to help their teams get better and their players develop. They're going to only play, let's say, the All-Star games after 82 games or whatever. What is that, the halfway point? What's the halfway of 160? 81? I think that sounds about right. So you have 81 games, and then instead of, if teams don't make the playoff run bracket, they just play kind of like a minor league baseball schedule, playing teams, again, outside of their region, in their region, whatever. You can kind of reshuffle it. Maybe have them doing longer trips where now they're playing 4 or 5 game series in other locations, but then they play maybe 60 games, 50 games, so that the season's getting shorter. So it's not worried about these long games. It's actually more, it's building up. So now you have 81 games, an odd number of games to go ahead and land in the top of your bracket. If you don't make those, if you don't make the cut, so like, what did I say? 88 teams, or 8 brackets of 10 teams. So from there you would need what? 4 times 8, you need 4 of those 10 teams to be picked to be the major bracket of that year, the major league. And then they go ahead and they play 82 games against each other. So this year, like the Yankees or whoever, now they're not playing the same old markets. They're not playing the same old teams. You're going to see minor league players that you've never heard of coming up. Maybe a team gets hot. They make a run. Then you go ahead and then you have similar structures. Instead of having 2 wild cards, you just have 4 3-game series or whatever. You take the top team from each new region. So like 4 teams from each region, now that they're going to make their own and they're going to keep battling. So you're building these regional rivalries. They're the new divisions. Everything's close, so the travel's not as far. And you really get a hatred for your neighbors, which is what sports was built on. You go to see Pittsburgh Steelers play the Philadelphia Eagles. You think that's friendly? You think the Steelers playing the Cleveland Browns is friendly? No, they're close regionally, and they have a nice intense rivalry. So now you can go ahead and build that in baseball. It's kind of gone the wayside since these expansions have happened. And so now go ahead, bring it up. Make baseball a regional sport again. Don't shrink the season because people are bored with it and not that many people are tuning in. Make more teams, get more people involved. Here in the Carolinas, we have no one. Our closest team, according to Major League Baseball, is either the Nationals or the Orioles. And that's outrageous because you have 3 states in there. Virginia, which is massive in its own right. And yeah, I guess you could consider the Nationals of Virginia's team. But then you have all of North Carolina, Charlotte and Raleigh, and even like I mentioned, Durham. Just keep it classic. Promote the Durham Bulls. Add a Charlotte team. In South Carolina, you have another sport that's been neglected, or another state that's been neglected by major sports. Throw a Columbia team. Throw a team in Myrtle Beach. You want tourists that are always down there, they want to catch a baseball game? Put it out there. A lot of people live in rural communities, want to go to the beach. They've never been to a baseball game. There you have it. Somewhere nice to go. Players might want to play there. I don't know. Mix it up. Try to get other states involved that aren't involved in major sports. Let their local legislations get behind it. You're already losing the bill because you're going to go ahead and get kicked to the curb whenever local politicians aren't buying your stadiums. Baseball can go ahead and make it America's pastime again. Baseball started whenever everyone lived in major cities, so they went ahead and put franchises in those cities. People would travel by train. Bring it back. Don't go back to the Stone Age, but let local people have local teams to cheer for. Put it on more networks. Go ahead, make it the social sport. Here, have like local get-ups, local check-ins. Have free, there shouldn't even be paid parking. I've talked about it before, but have like free parking night, free food night, whatever, $5 entry night. I don't know. Like, try to bring in a local crowd. Have like little minor league baseball promotions for these regional games early in the year. Try to build a fan base, and every year it happens. Like, maybe your team's one doesn't have a big budget, but around June or July, after, that could be about the beginning of July, NHL playoffs are already over, or even late in June, your team's been eliminated, you're not going to really pay attention. But you want to take a bite out of NHL and NBA, that's your time to do it. Have your championship right after it. And it's able to be watched. You have it there. They go ahead and do the World Cup around that same time. It gets massive ratings, so bring baseball back. That's what I suggest, and as I'm looking at these payrolls, I see a lot of teams that have the same struggles. They can't afford to fight on this top end, but why not allow more owners to jump in? And I know they'll be losing money, but over time, they're going to keep losing money because the bubble on sports is going to pop. These cable networks, they're not going to be around much longer. I mean, maybe people can keep throwing money at it, hoping people will pay for cable, but I don't know anyone that I've graduated with that actually pays for cable. College, I mean, no one pays for cable. They just don't watch the sports. If they want to watch sports, they'll go online or they'll try to buy like NBA ticket or MLB TV, or like, and NFL was like the one that was like killing everyone because it's tied into like cable packages, but that's probably bound to pop too. And then again, like whenever you have these major packages, your local team's blacked out. Like, are you kidding me? Your local team should be the only team you can watch, because that's how you're going to go ahead and get people to the games. If you want to go ahead and give Major League Baseball MLB TV for free, make the local team free. Don't make it blacked out. I know you have deals with cable network, but that's how you're alienating fans. If they can't see a team that they're going to drive to, they're not going to become fans of like the Texas Rangers. I've seen they're high on popularity lists, and one of the most searched teams in the world is the Texas Rangers. But if I'm here in North Carolina and that's the team I'm watching, that's the team I'm growing fond of, I just can't hop in a car and drive there. So why don't they go ahead and make a local team? I know we don't really have one within the vicinity or immediate area that I could drive to in an hour or two, but they could go ahead and get that started for other markets. Let people watch the games for free that are in their area. Yeah, it might not let them go to the stadium. It might not entice them. But overall, you're going to go ahead and have a bigger fan base because more people are exposed to the league. That's what they need to do. And you'll see some more of these. Some of the teams, it's just futile, and I feel bad for the fans of certain cities. And I think it would allow them to go ahead and bring in more fans overall if they added more regional situations to the Major League Baseball or Major League Baseball as a whole. So that's it. Thanks for listening to the Southbound Sports Show. I am your host, Richie Leahy.